Banned from my daughter's engagement party by my ex, who convinced my daughter to remove me from the guest list. But my revenge was swift. I deleted her from my will. Be me Derek, 43 years old. Run electrical contracting jobs all over Las Vegas. Been doing electrical work for 25 years now. Working my ass off in 120-degree summers, crawling through attics so people can have power and lights. Good money if you can handle the heat. Don't mind getting your hands dirty. Started this gig right out of high school. College wasn't in the cards financially. My old man was a plumber. Taught me that working with your hands wasn't something to be ashamed of. It was something to be proud of. Best advice he ever gave me was learn a skill people always need. You'll never go hungry. Electrical work in Nevada. Yeah, people always need that. Built my business from nothing. Started as an apprentice making $14 an hour. Lived in a studio apartment that was basically a closet with a microwave. Now I've got my own company with 8 trucks and 15 employees. We handle everything from residential repairs to commercial installations. Last month we did the electrical for a new shopping center. A $55,000 job that I bid and won against 4 other companies. I've got 2 kids. Jessica, 28, female. Tyler, 21, male. Their mother, Victoria, and I split when they were young. She decided being a medical office manager married to a blue-collar guy wasn't glamorous enough. Found out she was screwing around with Dr. Perfect from her clinic. Some plastic surgeon named Kevin drove a Mercedes and talked about wine tastings at dinner parties. The funny thing is, I was making more money than Kevin when Victoria left. Electrical work pays serious cash if you're good at it and willing to hustle. But Victoria got starry-eyed over his fancy office. The fact that he could talk about art museums without using the words, "That's cool." She wanted someone who looked good at cocktail parties, not someone who could actually fix things when they broke. When Victoria bailed on us 14 years ago, she didn't just leave me. She abandoned 2 kids who needed their mom. Tyler was only 7. Used to wait by the window every day after school, thinking she'd come pick him up. Kid would sit there for hours with his backpack on, ready to go wherever she wanted to take him. Jessica was 16 and went full emo for 2 years. Black everything, wouldn't talk to anybody. I'm talking about a kid who went from volleyball tryouts to writing poetry about darkness in her room. Found out later she was telling her friends at school that her mom died in a skiing accident, because it was easier than explaining that mommy chose Dr. Botox over her own family. Those first few years were brutal. Picture this, me trying to figure out how to handle a teenage daughter's period talk, while also teaching a 7-year-old boy how to tie his shoes. I was working 65-hour weeks because electrical emergencies don't wait. Someone's power goes out in August. You drop everything and fix it. Coming home exhausted to help with homework I barely understood. Trying to cook dinner that wasn't cereal or take out Chinese food. My brother Nathan helped out when he could. But mostly it was just me and the kids figuring it out as we went. Nathan's the guy who taught me that business is about relationships. Not just fixing things. He'd send overflow work my way when one of his customers needed electrical help. I'd recommend his auto shops when my clients needed car work. That's how you build a network in this town. Victoria moved to Henderson with Dr. Kevin. Sent Christmas cards maybe half the time. Real Mother of the Year material. Meanwhile, I'm the one sitting through parent-teacher conferences, dealing with Jessica's attitude about everything, making sure Tyler didn't turn into one of those kids who acts out because his mom abandoned him. I learned to braid hair from YouTube videos. Sat through every soccer game, every school play, every science fair presentation. When Tyler broke his wrist falling off his skateboard, I was the one sleeping in that uncomfortable hospital chair, not Victoria. When Jessica needed help with college applications, guess who spent every weekend proofreading essays about her life challenges? Fast forward to 8 months ago. Jessica gets engaged to this guy Brandon, 26 male, works in pharmaceutical sales. Nice enough kid, college educated. Treats my daughter well from what I could see. His dad, William, is some big shot attorney downtown. Handles corporate law for the kind of companies that send their executives to golf tournaments in Scotland. Here's where things get expensive. Jessica and Brandon want this dream wedding, but they're both drowning in student loans and can barely afford their apartment rent. Brandon is paying $900 a month on his business degree. Jessica's still chipping away at her communications major debt. They start talking about this reception hall in Paradise, plus catering for 180 people. Open bar, photographer, the whole deal. We're talking about $28,000 easy. And that's before you add in the dress, the flowers, and whatever other nonsense modern weddings require. Now, I never got a real wedding. Victoria and I did the courthouse thing when we found out she was pregnant, then had a barbecue in her parents' backyard. No dancing, no fancy dress, just hot dogs. Her dad complaining about the cost of beer. Her mom made a sheet cake from a box mix. The music was whatever was playing on the radio. Romantic as a convenience store hot dog. So, when my daughter started showing me pictures of this venue with the mountain views, talking about how it's her dream location, something in me decided I wanted to give her what I never had. Maybe it was guilt over the divorce. Maybe it was wanting to prove that the blue-collar dad could provide just as well as any fancy professional. I'm not rich, but I've been smart with money. Electrical work pays well if you're good at it. I've been saving for years. Got a retirement account that's doing pretty well. Paid off my house 4 years ago. 28 grand would hurt, but it was my little girl's wedding. So I told them I'd cover it. All of it. Jessica actually cried when I said yes. First time I'd seen her emotional about anything in years that wasn't anger or frustration. For a minute there, I felt like I was doing something right as a dad. Like maybe all those years of putting my kids first instead of dating or traveling or buying myself nice things had been worth it. Guess what? That feeling didn't last long. So one morning I'm having coffee and checking work orders. My phone rings. Jessica's name pops up, which is weird because she usually texts. She never calls unless something's wrong or she needs money. Last time she called was when her car broke down and she needed a tow truck. I figured maybe there was a wedding emergency. But she starts with some nonsense about keeping the wedding smaller and more intimate. I'm thinking, cool, less money out of my pocket. Maybe I can put the savings toward their honeymoon or a down payment on a house. Then she drops the real bomb. Dad, Mom thinks it would be better if you don't come. Apparently Victoria's going to be there with Dr. Perfect. And they're worried about drama. Because obviously the guy who's been busting his ass for 25 years to provide for his family is the problem, not the woman who abandoned her kids to play house with some guy. The logic here is bulletproof. I can pay for the wedding, but I can't attend it. Now, Victoria and I haven't had a real conversation in 4 years. We exchanged the occasional text about kids stuff. Managed to be in the same room without anyone calling the cops. The idea that I'd cause drama was about as realistic as me showing up in a tutu riding a unicorn. But here's my favorite part. She tells me not to make this about money, while literally making it about my money. I'm supposed to fund a wedding I can't attend. But hey, don't make it about money. That's like asking someone to buy you a Ferrari and then telling them they're being materialistic when they want to drive it. The real kicker. Brandon's family thinks it's better this way too. Translation. The lawyer family doesn't want the blue-collar dad cramping their style at the country club crowd gathering. I started thinking about all the times I'd met William and his wife at family dinners. The way they'd ask what I did for work with that tone that suggested they already knew it wasn't important. How they'd talk about their vacation house in Tahoe and their wine collection like it was supposed to impress me. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there knowing I probably make more in a year than William spends on his golf membership. The whole thing reminded me of this job I did last year for a tech startup. Bunch of 20-something kids who thought they were changing the world by creating an app that delivered bubble tea. They talked down to me the entire time I was installing their system, making jokes about blue-collar work, acting like I was some kind of caveman with a toolbox, right up until their server room started overheating because they designed their office space like idiots. Suddenly, they were begging me to work overtime to save their precious startup, paid me double time and called me a lifesaver. But you could tell they still thought they were better than me. That's exactly what this felt like. William's family was fine with my money, just not with me personally. The casual way Jessica delivered the news made my blood boil, like I should be grateful for the consolation prize of paying for a party I couldn't attend. She hung up without even asking how I felt about it. Didn't acknowledge that maybe asking your father to fund his own exclusion was messed up. Just hung up like she was confirming an appointment. I sat there for an hour staring at my phone, feeling like someone had kicked me in the chest. This was the same little girl I used to read bedtime stories to. The same kid I drove to soccer practice twice a week for 7 years. Sitting on aluminum bleachers in 110-degree heat because she loved the game. The same teenager I stayed up all night with when she had her wisdom teeth out, making sure she didn't choke on her own spit. And now she was treating me like some embarrassing relative who might show up drunk and ruin the photos. That night I called my brother Nathan. Told him the whole story while we sat in his garage, drinking beer and pretending to organize his tool collection. Nathan's response was classic. So the princess wants you to pay for the wedding but not attend. Because her mother, the same woman who abandoned her, might feel uncomfortable seeing you there. When he put it like that, it sounded even more ridiculous. Derek, you know what you gotta do, right? Yeah, I knew exactly what I had to do. You know what they say about revenge being a dish best served cold? Well, I'm more of a strike while the iron's hot kind of guy. First thing Thursday morning, I started making calls. Not to cancel everything. That would have been too easy and not nearly satisfying enough. Nope, I had a better idea. See, here's what my daughter and her fancy fiancé didn't know. The reception hall, the caterers, the photographer, the florist, all of those contracts are in my name. I'm the one who put down deposits. I'm the one they call if there are problems. I'm the one responsible for final payments. But there's something else they didn't consider. My brother Nathan doesn't just own auto shops. He's got connections all over Las Vegas like a spider web. 22 plus years in business will do that for you. The photographer, Nathan's drinking buddy from high school who still owes him money from a poker game in 1999. The caterer, we installed their entire electrical system 3 years ago. Probably saved them $12,000 compared to what the competition quoted. The florist, my neighbor's daughter, who I helped get started by recommending her to all my customers when she was trying to build her business. This is what people like William's family don't understand. We might not have country club memberships or Ivy League connections, but we've got something better. Mutual dependence. When your power goes out in July, you don't call Harvard Business School. You call Derek. So I started making adjustments, called the photographer first, and explained how the bride specifically didn't want her father in any photos. Not one. Jimmy's confused because what kind of wedding doesn't include the dad? But I explained that if I'm not in pictures and not attending, maybe we should adjust the price to reflect the reduced workload. Funny how that works. Next was Rosa, the caterer. Same conversation. No father of the bride speech means no champagne toast setup. No father-daughter dance means no special music requests. No proud dad means no special meal for the bridal party parents. Each missing element meant a smaller bill. By the time I called the florist, I was getting into the rhythm of it. No corsage for dad. No boutonniere for dad. No special table arrangements for the parents' table. Amazing how many wedding expenses are specifically related to honoring parents. Expenses that become unnecessary when the parents aren't welcome. But I wasn't done. See, Brandon's dad, William, thinks he's hot stuff because he's got a law degree from some fancy school. Drives a car that costs more than most people's annual salary. What he doesn't know is that I've been doing electrical work for Vegas Properties Management, the company that handles maintenance for half the office buildings downtown, including his precious law firm. I gave my contact there a call. Frank's been using my services for 9 years. Ever since I saved his ass when their main building's electrical system failed during a heat wave. They had 60 lawyers threatening to walk out. Mentioned that Mr. William Thompson's office might need some urgent electrical maintenance over the weekend. The kind that requires shutting down the power and making some loud repairs. On Saturday, all day. Frank understood immediately. He's divorced too, and his ex-wife pulled similar garbage during their custody battles. Some things transcend business relationships. I wasn't canceling anything or breaking any contracts. I was just adjusting services to match the reality of the situation. If there's no father at the wedding, then there's no need for father-related services. Basic business logic. Then I called Jessica back. The satisfaction in my voice was probably audible from space. I explained how I'd been thinking about her desire for a more intimate family experience, how I'd made some helpful adjustments to ensure the wedding matched her vision perfectly. The confusion in her voice was delicious as I explained each modification. No father walking her down the aisle. No need for the bridal suite flower arrangements that are traditionally part of that moment. No father-daughter dance. We could skip the extended DJ package. No father giving a speech. No champagne toast setup required. Dad, what are you saying? I'm saying I've customized your wedding to match your vision. Congratulations. You got exactly what you wanted. The silence on the other end was beautiful. You could practically hear the gears grinding as she realized that excluding me meant more than just having one less person at dinner. About 3 hours after I talked to Jessica, my phone started blowing up. Not with Jessica's number, though. With Victoria's, I let it go to voicemail 4 times before finally answering, mostly because I wanted to hear her squirm. Victoria calls with that special tone women get when they're about to lecture you about something that's actually their fault. You know, the voice, The same one she used to use when she'd spend $250 on shoes and then complain that we were tight on money. Starts yelling about how I'm being petty and vindictive and ruining Jessica's special day. Special day, right? The special day I'm paying for but can't attend. I pointed out the obvious flaw in her logic. But Victoria's got an answer for everything. Apparently, I don't belong at certain events, and I can't control my temper. This, from the woman who once threw a mug at me because I forgot to buy the expensive coffee creamer. But sure, I'm the one with anger management issues. The best part was when she tried to justify abandoning her kids by calling our marriage toxic. Lady, the only toxic thing in that house was your attitude and your wandering eye. But hey, at least I stuck around to deal with the aftermath instead of running off to play house with Dr. Plastic Surgery. She acted like she had some kind of veto power over my presence at my own daughter's wedding, like being the biological mother gave her executive authority over family events, even though she'd been AWOL for most of Jessica's important moments. I reminded her of some basic facts about our family history, like how she left 2 kids to shack up with her boss, like how she moved to Henderson and barely bothered to call on birthdays, like how I was the one who dealt with every scraped knee, every broken heart, every parent-teacher conference for over a decade. You think because you worked hard and paid some bills, you're entitled to respect. That line right there showed me everything I needed to know about Victoria's mindset. In her world, being a provider was just paying some bills. Being a father was just working hard. Like any idiot with a checkbook could do what I did. She had no concept of what it meant to be the only parent showing up to school events. No understanding of the weight that comes with being solely responsible for 2 human beings' emotional and financial well-being. To her, I was just the guy who happened to stick around and write checks. The conversation reminded me of this customer I had a few years back. Rich lady in Summerlin whose electrical went out during a July heat wave. She called me at 11 p.m., demanding immediate service, then spent the entire repair talking about how service people should be more professional and punctual, right up until her system died completely the next day. And she realized that the service person she'd been talking down to was the only guy in town who could fix her custom European electrical system. Suddenly, I was a lifesaver and so professional when she needed me. That's Victoria in a nutshell. After we hung up, I realized Victoria had actually done me a favor. She'd shown me exactly who she still was after all these years. In her mind, I was still supposed to be the grateful ex-husband who pays for everything and keeps his mouth shut. She expected me to fund her comeback tour as Mother of the Year while sitting in the audience. Or in this case, not even in the audience. But I had one more card to play, and it was going to be brutal. William agreed to meet me near his office Friday afternoon. Probably figured he could intimidate me on his home turf. Or maybe he just wanted to get this situation handled quickly so it wouldn't interfere with his weekend golf plans. I showed up in my work clothes. Jeans, boots, company shirt with Derek embroidered on the pocket. Let him see exactly who he was dealing with. Meanwhile, he walks in looking like he just stepped out of a men's fashion magazine. William shows up wearing a suit that probably costs more than most people's monthly rent, sitting down like he's about to negotiate a plea bargain for a serial killer. He starts with some lawyer nonsense about getting off on the wrong foot and avoiding family drama. I had to laugh. Family drama. Like the drama of a father wanting to attend his daughter's wedding is somehow equivalent to a Jerry Springer episode. He tries the whole money, doesn't give you right speech, which is hilarious coming from a guy whose entire career is based on rich people using money to get their way. I've seen his billboards around town. Thompson and Associates protecting your assets, with a picture of him standing in front of what looks like a mansion. But when I mention that all the wedding contracts are in my name, suddenly Mr. Harvard Law School realizes he might be out of his league. See, William thought this was about hurt feelings and family dynamics. He figured he could smooth talk the blue-collar guy into being reasonable, maybe throw around some legal-sounding words to make me back down. What he didn't realize is that I've been running a business for 2 decades, and I understand leverage better than most lawyers understand billable hours. The thing about lawyers is they're used to intimidating people with fancy language and threats of litigation. But you can't sue someone for adjusting their own business contracts. And you can't force someone to pay for services they're not receiving. When I started showing him the text messages from vendors asking about scaled-back services and adjusted packages, his face went whiter than his dental veneers. Then I mentioned the urgent maintenance his office building needed over the weekend, and I thought he might need medical attention. You should have seen his expression when I explained how Frank from Vegas Properties had some concerns about their building's electrical system, how the power might need to be shut down for safety reasons during the weekend, how these things sometimes take longer to repair than expected, especially when the maintenance crew is dealing with multiple emergency calls. That's not legal, he sputtered. What's not legal? Performing necessary maintenance on a building's electrical system. Pretty sure the city building codes actually require that kind of preventive maintenance. William tried to pull the lawyer card, talking about contracts and obligations and good faith negotiations, but I could see the panic starting to set in. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. This was about his reputation, his business, his ability to function in 120-degree weather without air conditioning. Nothing quite like watching a fancy lawyer realize that the working guy he tried to push around has more connections than his country club membership directory. I pulled out my phone and started showing him screenshots of vendor communications. Rosa asking about menu adjustments. Jimmy wondering about photography package modifications. The florist requesting clarification on arrangement requirements. Each message was perfectly professional and completely reasonable. Just business people trying to understand the scope of their work. You can't be serious about all this, William said, loosening his tie. Dead serious. See, William, you thought this was about a wedding, but it's really about respect. And if I'm not getting any, then nobody else is either. The beautiful thing was watching him realize that his law degree meant absolutely nothing in this situation. You can't litigate your way out of electrical problems, and you can't sue people for adjusting their business relationships. I stood up to leave and William tried one last desperate play. Maybe we can work something out. Maybe we can have Jessica call me when she's ready to apologize and ask me to attend my daughter's wedding. Until then, she can figure out how to pay for her own dream wedding. Saturday was like Christmas morning. If Christmas morning involved watching entitled people realize their chickens had come home to roost, Brandon calls at 7:30 a.m., sounding like someone had told him his trust fund got donated to charity. Poor kids practically hyperventilating about vendor issues. Apparently, the photographer's main camera might not be available, and the caterer's asking about switching to a basic service package. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. But then I remembered that he went along with excluding me from my own daughter's wedding, so my sympathy meter was reading somewhere between empty and go screw yourself. The kid was genuinely confused about how everything was falling apart so quickly. In his world, problems get solved by writing checks or making phone calls to the right people. He had no concept that the right people in Las Vegas's service industry all knew each other. And they all knew me. Brandon tried explaining that his father could make some calls to fix things, but that just showed how little he understood about the situation. William might know judges and politicians, but he doesn't know the guy who fixes their electrical when it breaks. Jessica calls a few hours later, and she's not crying. She's pissed, which is typical Jessica. When things don't go her way, she gets angry instead of figuring out what she did wrong. She's screaming about vendors acting weird and how I'm supposedly blackmailing them. Blackmail. That's rich? Apparently, adjusting your financial commitment when people adjust your invitation status is now extortion. It's like these people learned economics from a monopoly board. She demanded to know what I'd done to the vendors. I explained that I'd simply had honest conversations about the changing nature of the event they were servicing. When you remove the father from a wedding, you naturally remove all the father-related services. Basic logic. You're ruining my wedding, she yelled. No, sweetheart. I'm just not paying for it anymore. There's a difference. The tantrum that followed was epic. Jessica screaming about how I was being manipulative and controlling, which was ironic, considering she was trying to manipulate me into paying for an event I couldn't attend. Then Victoria called, and this conversation was even better. She'd clearly been coaching Jessica on what to say, because she immediately launched into this speech about family obligations and unconditional love. Unconditional love, from the woman who conditioned her love for her children on whether they interfered with her new relationship. Victoria demanded that I fix this mess immediately, like I was some kind of customer service representative whose job was to solve problems I didn't create. She kept using words like reasonable and mature, apparently forgetting that asking someone to fund their own exclusion isn't exactly the height of maturity. The best part was when she threatened to take action if I didn't cooperate. What action? Sue me for not paying for a wedding I wasn't invited to? Report me to the Better Business Bureau for adjusting my own contracts? By afternoon, the panic was setting in. The venue coordinator called asking for clarification about event setup. Since several key vendors were requesting modifications to their service agreements, the DJ wanted to know if he should bring equipment for a limited celebration instead of a full reception. Each call made the situation more real for everyone involved. This wasn't just me being difficult. This was the systematic collapse of an event that depended on coordination between multiple service providers who all answered to me. Around 6 p.m., Nathan called to check on how things were going. I could hear him laughing in the background as I described the day's events. "Derek, you're like a masterclass in applied leverage. These people are learning that money doesn't just buy services, it buys relationships." He was right. William's family thought they could treat me like a vending machine. Insert money, receive wedding, ignore the person providing the service. But business doesn't work that way, especially not in a town where reputation and relationships matter more than bank accounts. The evening ended with 3 more calls from increasingly desperate family members, each trying a different approach to get me to be reasonable. But they were missing the point entirely. This was never about being reasonable. This was about being respected. Sunday morning at 8:30 a.m. I'm having coffee when my doorbell rings. I open it to find the most pathetic delegation since France surrendered in World War II, Jessica in her pajamas with raccoon eyes from crying, Brandon looking like he hadn't slept since Wednesday, Victoria trying to maintain her composure but failing miserably, and William looking like someone had just told him his BMW got repossessed. It was beautiful. The sight of all 4 of them standing on my porch, looking desperate and defeated, was worth every penny of the aggravation they'd put me through. Jessica's hair was a mess. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she was wearing pajama pants with cartoon characters on them. Not exactly the image of a confident bride on her wedding day. Brandon looked like he'd aged 6 years in the past week. Poor kid probably thought getting married was supposed to be the stressful part. Victoria was doing her best to look composed, but I could see the cracks in her facade. Her makeup was a little too perfect, her smile a little too forced. She was clearly the designated spokesperson for this little intervention, but you could tell she'd rather be anywhere else. And William. Oh, William was a sight to behold. Mr. Corporate Lawyer was wearing weekend casual clothes that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. But he looked like he'd been hit by a freight train. No doubt his law firm partners were asking pointed questions about why their office building's electrical had mysteriously failed during the weekend. Jessica launches into this whole apology speech about being wrong and selfish. The words were coming out fast, like she'd rehearsed them, but you could tell her heart wasn't really in it. This wasn't genuine remorse. This was panic-driven damage control. Meanwhile, I'm standing there in my bathrobe, taking my sweet time with this moment. 28 grand buys you a lot of satisfaction when people finally realize they screwed up. I let her finish her whole speech before saying anything, just enjoying the desperation in her voice. Brandon starts explaining how everything's falling apart. The photographer's equipment is malfunctioning. The caterer's suggesting pizza instead of filet mignon. The florist delivered flowers that looked like they came from a gas station. And even the DJ's speakers are having technical difficulties. Each problem he described was perfectly predictable and entirely preventable. If you want premium service, you treat the service providers with respect. If you want people to go above and beyond for your event, you don't insult the guy who's paying for everything. William's face looked like he'd been eating lemons when he mentioned his office building losing electrical over the weekend. Apparently, his entire law firm had to shut down, and several important clients had rescheduled meetings. The building management was investigating the cause of the system failure. But these things take time to diagnose properly. What a shame. Really breaks my heart. Then came the negotiation, which was where things got really interesting. I laid out my terms like I was reading a grocery list, each demand perfectly reasonable in the context of what they'd put me through. Victoria had to give a speech about what a great father I'd been. Not just a generic thank you, but a specific acknowledgement of everything I'd done to raise Jessica and Tyler after she abandoned them. The look on her face when I explained this requirement was priceless, like someone had asked her to eat a live bug. William's firm would provide free legal work for Nathan's business expansion, a year of pro bono services, including contract reviews, permit applications, and whatever else came up. William tried to object, calling it extortion, but I pointed out that it was simply the cost of disrespecting me. Take it or leave it. Jessica would write thank you notes to every single vendor, apologizing for the miscommunication and thanking them for their flexibility. Handwritten notes, not emails or texts. the kind of personal touch that shows you actually understand how badly you screwed up. And Brandon would have a conversation with his father about treating working people with respect, regardless of what they do for a living. This wasn't negotiable. The kid needed to understand that his family's attitude toward blue-collar workers was part of the problem. Watching Victoria agree to praise me publicly was like watching someone agree to eat a live scorpion. But when your daughter's wedding is 7 hours away and everything's falling apart, you swallow your pride, along with whatever dignity you have left. By 3 p.m., it was like watching a master class in damage control. Suddenly, everyone's equipment started working again. The caterer delivered a meal that would make Gordon Ramsay weep with joy. The flowers looked like they came from the Garden of Eden. Even William's office electrical miraculously repaired itself. The wedding was perfect, but not in the way Jessica originally planned. I walked her down the aisle while she cried, not tears of joy, but tears of guilt and embarrassment. She knew that everyone at the wedding had heard about the drama, knew that her father had to be begged to attend his own daughter's wedding. Victoria gave her speech about my devoted fatherhood while looking like she was passing kidney stones. Every word was torture for her, but she delivered it with a smile because she had no choice. The guests ate it up, of course. Everyone loves a story about family reconciliation. William spent the entire reception looking like someone had force-fed him humble pie with a side of crow. Every time someone complimented the beautiful family celebration, his smile got a little more strained. During our father-daughter dance, Jessica tried to apologize again, but I wasn't interested in her guilt trip. I told her she'd learned an expensive lesson about biting the hand that feeds you. The look on her face when she realized our relationship had permanently changed was worth every penny of aggravation. The real victory wasn't the perfect wedding or the forced apologies. It was watching 4 people who thought they could manipulate me realize that the guy with calloused hands and dirt under his fingernails had more power than their combined college degrees and social connections. They wanted a wedding without the father. They got to see what that actually looked like. And apparently it looked like a complete disaster. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's making people understand exactly how much they need you while they're trying to push you away. They learned that respect isn't something you can buy or negotiate. It's something you earn by treating people right. Now Jessica calls me sir when she wants something. Victoria avoids family events like I'm carrying the plague. And William's firm has been very helpful with Nathan's legal needs. Brandon turned out to be an okay kid once he learned some respect. Edit. For everyone asking about updates. Jessica and I have a better relationship now, built on mutual respect, instead of her just taking my money. Victoria barely speaks to any of us, which is honestly an improvement. William's firm has done excellent work for my brother's expansion, and I'm dating a wonderful woman who actually appreciates me for who I am. Life's pretty good when people understand where they stand.